Hello, Journey. My name is Dominic Velando, and welcome to Storytelling for Coaches. You can learn more about me at hyperfocuscoaching.com and on Instagram at hyperfocuscoaching. So this recording was originally of a workshop that I held on the 25th of March, 2021. I forgot to record until about 5 minutes into it. So there are a few slides I want to catch you up with, and then we're going to jump back into the recording. But a little bit about myself. I am formally trained in sequential art, aka comics. I also studied at the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. I picked up a lot of my technical skills as a managing editor and reporter for an MMA website, news website, as well as developing curriculum for around the subject of storytelling and comics for private schools. Not to mention, a lot of my experience comes from some really traumatic, crazy things that happened in my own life. And then all of a sudden, my personal story became pretty interesting and valuable, and really motivated me to tap into my own vulnerability and transparency and be able to share parts of my life, my pain, my life experiences, so that I can reach other people through storytelling and attract them to what I do, which is coach people with ADHD and also coach people through creative endeavors that they want to get started. I recognized a need within the Journey coaching community and the coaching community at large. People were saying, I'd like to tell my story. I have a story to tell, but I'm not sure how to get started. So I'm hoping to address how you can tell your story and why you can tell your story. Why is your story so important? I'm going to go over that and how do I get started, and that is going to have both some very personal and experiential reasons, as well as technical wisdom that I'm going to share with you. So starting with why. Your story helps you stand out from every other coach in the world. There was a recent study by the ICF in which 22,000 coaches responded. And so that kind of gives you an idea how many coaches are out there practicing in the world. I mean, that's only a portion of them, because a lot of people didn't respond. And I mean, there's been some time that has lapsed since that study was put out. So, I mean, there are thousands and thousands of coaches out there. How does one stand out? Well, your story is a big key. As well as your presentation of your story. It's not just about your story, it's about your presentation, how you tell it, the media you use, which information, which content you choose to put into your storytelling. Your story also aligns with your niche and your audience. So I also did some searching on Instagram. I found that there are 10 million posts tagged with the hashtag life coach. Now imagine that you're just putting the hashtag life coach on all your posts. You're going to end up getting lost in an ocean of content. The more you can start telling it from your perspective and identifying yourself as, through your demographics, your own gender identity and your culture and your background, you're going to attract like-minded people who have the same problems as you. And that's one of the big things that a coach does is, and that you want to acknowledge when you're marketing, is people have problems. They're looking for solutions, and you're out there with a service that people are willing to pay or trade for. And the more you can, and in any story, the hero doesn't just live in a vacuum with no problems, because there'd be no story. The hero has to overcome some kind of problem or conflict. So the better you can transmit the idea that you are solving these problems both for yourself and for other people, the better you're going to, and the particulars of that struggle, the better you can connect with your niche and your audience. Your story contributes to your credibility, reputation, and ultimately the trust you build with your audience and clients. Now, look, the key word here is trust. It's all about building this trust, because you can do all the marketing you want, but if people don't trust you, They're not going to go into business with you. You're not going to get very far with them. So what you can do is, in addition to the content of your story itself and the way you present it in terms of like the technical creative aspects, you can also charge that story with parts of yourself that are going to really lend to your credibility. Now, by credibility, I mean, for instance, your title? Are you a CEO? Are you a black belt? Also, have you won awards? These are things that you can weave into your story to give yourself some credibility. Your reputation. So we're talking about referrals. We're talking about telling your story from the aspect of not just you, but your community, or, associations that you're affiliated with. And remember, your reputation is ongoing, just as your story can be an ongoing thing. Your reputation builds as you tell your story. But ultimately, you're trying to build trust, because that's what marketing is all about. And that's what, if you're going to reach out to people to fulfill your greater cause, you're going to need people to trust you. Okay, now you're caught up. Your story is your intellectual property and can be packaged and monetized. This is huge, guys. This is absolutely huge. For me, this is as a visual artist, primarily, a storyteller and artist. This is one of the goals anyway. Whether and this includes your YouTube videos, whether you want to make a poetry chat book, whether you want to what's great about this is that your intellectual property comes directly from you. It's your creation, and once you put it out there in the world, as long as you properly protect it and set it up so that and you properly document it so that you can present it later, which is something to consider. Anything you put out in the world that is your story. For instance, let's say I draw comics for Instagram. If I'm just throwing them out there on Instagram and that's the only place that it lives, that's not print ready, because Instagram's gonna do all kind of compression and such. So if I go to a printer, it's not prepared for that. If you're out there doing Instagram live chats, for instance, can you package that up and put a price on it? Not really. I mean, you can do it with some difficulty, but you got to do it retroactively. So that's where you look at, going into podcasting or having actual recordings. But I want to pose a question to you. Think about the most successful and well-known coaches that you know. It could be anybody. And think of the biggest ones that you know. Let's go all the way back to, like, let's say a Tony Robbins. Do you suppose Tony Robbins spends his day coaching 4 to 5 people a day? Probably not. What do you think he does all day? He's running a business. He's at that level where he's running a business. He's got books. He's got products. He's got products. He's not. You can max out your schedule so much, and then you can't trade hours for money anymore. Agreed? I mean, there's a cap to that. So this is part of the reason that your story is so important, is because that's passive income for you. Your story informs your entire marketing strategy. I mean, that's what marketing is, right? Is you're telling a story, particularly for people who've never heard of your product or service. You got to figure out what are the parameters, how much time do I have to tell the story, who am I reaching? It's all storytelling. I think this is pretty much self-explanatory. I would argue that being a better storyteller makes you a better coach, specifically because clients do not present you with their entire life as it is, but their story. Think of your discovery call. You never seen this person in life. You don't know them from Adam or Eve. How are you going to get to know them? They're going to tell you their story. They're going to present themselves to you. Now, you might find out there's a different story later on as you're coaching them, or as you get to know them, or maybe if you do a Google search. So, or public records. But look, the point is that people are presenting you with a story, you're presenting them with a story, and there's a trust. Going back to the trust thing, I am trusting you that you are who you say you are. You are trusting me that I am who I say I am, and my marketing says I am, and my referrals. And so we're meeting in the middle. I have my story, you have your story, and then if we find it agreeable, then we go into business. It's really, I think it's really important for people to recognize this, that even though we address people as a human, as a whole human being, because that's a big part of what people want when they come to coaching, is for someone to recognize them as a whole human being. You can only go off of what you're told and what you're presented with. So the reason that being a better storyteller makes you a better coach is because, let's say you're in a niche, it's real defined. And like with me, it's ADHD. You can imagine that every story isn't totally wildly different. It's kind of the same story over and over, right? So it's going to have some of the same details. It's going to have some of the same themes and patterns. The better I am at familiarizing myself with the stories and how this story plays out, the better I can pick up on red flags, green flags, whatever it is, the better I can dissect, okay, what is this person telling me? How are they presenting themselves? How does that jive with what I know? I can reference it with what I'm already aware of. And not only that, but I can, I can develop a better connection with that person. So this is why I really am big on learning how stories are told, like the actual structure of it and the flow of it and all the technical aspects of it. Telling your story is an antidote to imposter syndrome. That's what I'm screaming. Because we all suffer from it, and as we know, like, it never stops. I mean, even people who are very successful and they've been doing things for years and years, sometimes they second guess themselves. So imposter syndrome doesn't necessarily go away, but man, telling your story can be a big part of the solution to that, and grounding yourself in, okay, who am I and what is it that I do? As you tell your story, I mean, it really reinforces that. And then also, think about this. Like I said, I'm telling my story as a coach. You're telling your story as a client. We're meeting in the middle. It's the same thing with just your audience at large. Who is, let's say I'm the best at something. Okay, let's say I'm the best ADHD coach on the planet. According to whom? I mean, you can go by numbers for sure. But also if I'm the best, it generally means that everyone agrees, or at least there's a large enough consensus of people that agrees, right? Who's the greatest rapper alive? Could be anybody, but it's a popular opinion issue. So the more that I tell my story effectively, and the more that people align with my story, the more we all agree that I am who I say I am, and I'm supported in that argument. So this is a big reason that telling your story and getting really good at it, and obviously being, we want to be as honest and have as much integrity in doing so, but that can really help you with supporting your identity as a coach. Okay, so I hope that answered some questions about why it's important to tell stories. I know in the Facebook post I said that I was going to spend 20 minutes on this, but I figured I would kind of let it breathe and do what it does. Is anybody having questions right up front about like what we went over in terms of why? Okay, cool. Cool. Okay, let's get back into it. So let's move on to how. Okay, here we are. How do I start? Now, if you already have some skills or some experience with telling stories, I think you'll find some value in this, but I know a lot of people are like, how do I even begin? Especially because it's intimidating. It can be. I mean, particularly, you know, blasting yourself out into like the Instagram, TikTok, where, you know, because like, I mean, that's a lot of potential people that could uh, be reflecting you. So let's talk about how you can get started, particularly for those of you who have some apprehensions about it. One of the ways you can do is start from, go back to the why part. You ever gone to, I'll tell you a little story. I went to this TikTok, or I should say a social media coach. And I said, man, I got to get on TikTok. And he goes, why do you want to do that? And I was like, I want to, and he's like, okay, dude, you need to know why. Like all these people are always, they get this fear of missing out. I got to be on TikTok. I keep hearing about TikTok. And then they jump right to, I got to get on there. They haven't thought about why. Like, do you want to, you know, you could be your business, you could be meeting a soulmate, you could be having fun. There's so many different ways. It's going to inform how you do it. I'm going to take a little break. Let me tell you a story. Um, so this is a story about two major events that happened in my life that led me to finding my superpowers as a storyteller. And I mean, obviously, from what I've been telling you, I have some experience in terms of technical stuff, drawing comics. I've always loved stories, but in terms of my story and embracing like my transparency, my vulnerability, put myself out there were a couple of particular events that I'd like to tell you about. The first happened when I went to this ADHD conference. I didn't know nobody. I just knew it was very important because I was really struggling with it. And I go into this peer support group. I didn't know what that was, but you know, it's a bunch of people and it's got a host, and you're gonna express yourself and get support. And I remember they just opened it up. The host says, "Okay, so who would like to start? Just, you know, let's hear about your ADHD experience and your life." And I remember just all of a sudden my hands started racing. And I was like, "Oh my God, no!" I just, apparently I needed to talk about it, even though I was horrified. And she goes, "Okay, go ahead. Let's hear from you. What's your name and all that?" You guys, I was so terrified that I started dissociating. I don't remember what I said. I was freaking the fuck out. I apologize for the language, but like if you have, so if you got 7-year-olds, just kick them out right now. But I remember the whole time, part of the reason that I was so horrified is because I had this internal voice that was telling me like, dude, what are you doing? Like, people have real problems in life. People live in third world countries. People have, you know, people people have real problems. Now, mind you, I don't remember what I said, but I know that I told them about my highly traumatic childhood. I know them. I told them about losing my dad at the age of 29. I know I told them about losing my best friend to suicide at the age of 32, and then my mom at the age of 33. I know I told them about my breakup with the person I was with for 8 years and all of the people that I lost during that relationship. And here I am thinking like, geez, people have real problems and nobody gives a fuck. Like I had a real story. And when I was done, I brought my hand down and then I was like, oh, that was ridiculous. And everyone else was talking in the peer support group, carried on. At the end of this, peer support group is over. I get up, I'm headed towards the door, really embarrassed. And people started intercepting me because they wanted to connect with me. They wanted to share with me how valuable that was. Some people were crying, some people were laughing, some people were very upset. And I remember that was the moment I was like, wait a minute. So this is the last thing I wanted to do, was tell my story. And yet it affected people so deeply that they had to run up on me and thank me. This had some value to people. I completely discredited the value. So what I'm saying to you is that if you need to say, if you got a story you know you need to tell, someone needs to hear it. just as much as you badly, desperately want to tell this story, someone wants to hear it. You might save somebody's fucking life. That's real. You might change somebody's life around entirely. So don't downplay. If you get this voice inside you that's like, I got a story to tell. You're right. You absolutely do. So the other event that happened was, fast forward another like year and a half later, and I've hired one of the coaches that I met through this conference, and he is now a mentor of mine. One of the main frameworks that he uses in his coaching practice, and this is all before Journey, all that type of stuff. One of the main frameworks that he uses is storytelling, particularly Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, which is, if you're not familiar with that, this is a guy that he was in this study of comparative mythology. He went through all society all over the world in the history books and tried to find the different themes and patterns throughout different mythologies and religious stories throughout time, and present this archetypal cycle, this hero's journey. So we all know that, like, in literature, there's like a story structure. There's a basic story structure. Usually, it's some kind of beginning, middle, and end. Hero's journey is another one of those story structures, and it's very powerful. And a lot of people, I mean, it's one of the more influential concepts in Western civilization, from what I can tell. So it's very important. There's lots of coaches practicing it, but he's practicing it, and then we're talking, and I'm in a really bad way, very emotionally unstable, having a hard time with a lot of different things. And he's a really good coach. So he picks up on some of the stuff that I do, my strengths. And he says, why don't you ever heard of an avatar? Not the movie, but like an avatar that is a projection of yourself. So why don't you create an avatar who is like a heroic version of yourself? You draw comics. Why don't you draw some comics about what that guy would do in your situation? So I started doing that, just as a coaching exercise between him and me. And then I text him my drawings. Then I started putting it on Instagram. I was like, you know what? I'm on Instagram. Like, I draw comics and I like to get some feedback. And but still, it was just more of a personal exercise. I started putting it out there. Boom. People are sorry, something came up. I'm gonna try to address this real quick. They are reacting in this way where it's like, I can't believe the comments. Like, it's again, I'm getting the same reaction I did in the peer support group, where people are, they're like, like one of the comments was like, me and my partner, we sat down and read all of your posts, and it's like just unbelievable how many similarities we see. And like, thank you so much. So once again, I wasn't trying to put the value out there, but like, I'm starting to recognize that the value is inherent in it. And I mean, geez, it turned into a whole nother thing, and it turned into a whole evolution. So those are two of the things that I wanted to share with you in terms of my journey and storytelling, and like how I started to learn the value of this stuff, and hopefully that's a little bit enlightening in terms of like, if you got a story that you think you need to tell, you're absolutely right. People need to hear it. So however you can start doing that, I think you should. How do you get started? So yeah, that's part of how I got started, was that it was kind of, I got started the hard way. You know what I mean? Like, I just had to discover through my own, like, I had to get over my own horror and my own imposter syndrome, and realize that like, your story has value, and people need to hear it. And it's life-changing stuff. So let me share my screen real quick. So to recap, go back to your why. And that's part of my why, is that when I saw that it brought up, like, my pain matched with other people's, did a little dance, and now we have a connection. And now, like, and one of the main things that I get, the feedback that I get from telling my story, particularly with ADHD, because it's such a specific experience, it's very weird and it's hard to express. And so when I express it and articulate in only the way that I can, people feel less alone. And that's probably the number one thing I get is like, thank God you're putting this stuff out there because I thought nobody understood. So this is what you can do for people. Storytelling can be a personal and therapeutic exercise and a networking and marketing exercise. So I just gave you an example of both, right? So, I mean, it started for me as a coaching exercise and it was really helping me out. And it turned into, oops, please mute if you are not muted. It can, and there's always gonna be an overlap, I find. Depending on, oh my God, someone's sneezing into the microphone, please mute. Now I gotta find you. Now I gotta find you and see if you're already muted. Okay, are you muted? All right, anyway. Not only did it turn into from a therapeutic exercise into more of a networking marketing exercise, but I've gone back and forth and I've told my story in a different way. And I found that when your audience is rocking with you, they recognize what you're doing. I even had people reach out to me and say, man, the stuff that you're putting out there is super heavy. I hope you're taking care of yourself. And it's just an amazing experience. So that kind of, and you pay attention to some of the journey coaches. I see some of them out there doing it too. They're really putting it out there on the line, the transparency, and it's both, believe me, it's helping their business, but it's also very much a personal exercise. And that's one of the beautiful things about it. Connect with your cause. You got a bigger cause. Are you intimidated? Do you have apprehensions? Do you have an imposter syndrome? Connect with your cause. Connect with your hero. Try that exercise. Connect with your children. I get a dear friend who is right now like trying to get over imposter syndrome over this and has come to the conclusion that I want my children to look back and be like, whoa, my mom had this heroic story and decided to put it out there. Connect with your why. So you want to know how, start there. If you're uncomfortable, start small, start from your comfort zone. That's another way to go about it. Even if it's the tiniest little thing, it's still better than you took a baby step. And sometimes you might think to yourself, well, it's not worth it because it's a baby step. Well, you weren't taking any baby steps. So if you took a baby step, all of a sudden you're making progress. And start from your comfort zone. What I mean by that, use your strengths. All art forms are valid in 2021. Look, one of the main things that the main pieces of feedback I get from people when they find that I'm an artist and they see me making art is, gee, I wish I was an artist. Like, stop. You totally are. It's just that I think what happens is people have this idea of what art is supposed to look like. What's cool about living in 2021 is that, I mean, we're even further than like it. So look, in the 1930s, before the 1930s, since the 1930s, we started living in what's called the postmodern age. Basically, art used to be only valid if it was paintings and sculptures of dead people and religious figures and stuff like that, and then epic literature, and and that was pretty much it. Otherwise, it was bullshit. And then there was this huge movement where people were like, no, we're going to decide what art is. The people are going to decide. So then there was this massive revolution that happened. And then that has like exploded with the age we live in now. So look, if you gotta make a poetry book, if you got to do an interpretive dance, if you got to make an ASMR video eating potato chips into a microphone, if you got to like do whatever you got to do, man. Like if you can, as long as you can make the connection, that's all that matters. Like there are literally people out there who are doing just the most bizarre stuff and people are getting the message, believe it or not. Someone's getting the message. As long as you can make that connection, your art, your story is valid. As you go forth, offer value through your storytelling and signal that you can provide what your audience needs. So if you're just telling your story as a therapeutic thing, that's fine. But if you're trying to attract clients, and you're trying to do a little marketing exercise, you need to signal value, or I'm sorry, you need to offer some value. Now, what I mean by that is that you don't want to try to sell people, because that's very uncool right now. And people are very, very sensitive, particularly in the younger generations. They don't like that type of stuff. A lot of us, most of us don't, I think, but like a lot of that really salesy stuff is out the window, and you gotta there's so much free information out there that you gotta offer some value. This is the arena you're entering into. So you gotta offer some value up front. But within that, you can offer more, like, signal that, look, that was pretty cool, right? That you like that post? Well, you leave some breadcrumbs. You, and you don't have to be sly about it, but like the point is you offer some value up front, and then you also let people know that, look, I'm also I got workshops, I'm coaching, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Visit my website, tap on the link on my bio, reach out to me, whatever it is. So it's whatever you want to do. Go back to your why. But if you want to have it as part of your business, make sure that you're offering value up front, instead of just trying to like give people sales pitch and then only have the value behind a paywall. Signal that you got more value behind the paywall, but give people the value up front. Another way to do it is learn the classic story structures. I mean, there's so many, I'm not going to get into it, but basically most of the classic story structures come down to a beginning, middle, and end, right? We all learn that in school. It's pretty obvious. It's very helpful. Like I said, I really believe that being a better storyteller helps you be a better coach. But also, in 2021, every second is an opportunity for storytelling. What that means is that it used to be that when you wanted to tell your story, you go into the lab or the workshop or whatever, you package it up, and then you put it out there, or you rehearse it, and then you go on a stage and then you do it. Now you can go. There are people who have. You ever seen a YouTube live stream that just goes constantly, and there's people in the chat, they're chatting it up. That's a great little piece of marketing, because it never ends. This is the opportunity we have. It's also kind of the curse we have, but we can instantaneously transmit our story at all times, by going live, and so we have more opportunities. Don't overwhelm yourself by thinking that you have to be doing this all the time. You shouldn't. You should take care of yourself. But also, this is one of the cool things, is that you can think about ways that you can do that at all times. Have your story kind of floating around there, or you can do live things. It's a pretty crazy time. Here's an exercise for you. That's pretty much my presentation. So let's shift into a little bit of participation. And it's going to go down in the chat. What I would like you to do, type a 1-sentence story in the chat from a to me point of view. Now, if you're familiar with John Kim's container theory, there are different perspectives. He has a theory that, like, there are different perspectives from which people view their life. And at the bottom, if you will, there's the victim mentality, which is everything's happening to me. Does that make more sense now? Everything is happening to me. I have no control in this life. I'm a victim. So I'll give you some examples and put this in the chat. They abandoned me. She divorced me. I was born with a disorder. I get dumped. I get fucked over by the system. I dropped out, or they kicked me out. Something was taken from me. I'm all alone. Tell me a story in 1 sentence from that perspective. If it takes you a second to wrap your head around that, that's cool. But thanks, Butch. We'll see you later. It could be personal to you. It could be whatever. My parents raised me without the rule book for life, and it took me 30 years. What most people start with. Woo, that's a good one. I'm underworked and underpaid. Excellent. Overworked, yeah. I like it. Yeah, I'll give you my example. Like, oh, okay, I was the youngest four, seen and not heard. Yeah, like that. Trying to think of one for like one of mine would be I grew up mixed race and ADHD, and so nobody understood me. I had to be perfect to make my mom proud. Let's see if we can get a couple more. Geez, Phil, that's a good one. My parents raised me about the rule book for life. Took me 30 years to learn what most people start with. I think that's highly relatable for probably most people. Okay. So Phil, I'll start with you, if you will. Going back to John Kim's frameworks or the container theory, the highest level is through me, right? Or let's go with to me or for me or through me. So through me is like I'm living, these things happen so that I could, you know, make the world a better place, or I believe I deserve these things. So basically, can you reframe that same story in one sentence? You could throw it in the chat. You could just speak it out. But can you take that same story and rephrase it for us, please? If you're picking up what I'm putting down.
Would you rather I do it in chat or okay?
Oh, if you want to just tell us. And let me ask you this: are you okay with somebody else helping you with that?
Oh, sure. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure, because sometimes some might you'd be like, well, I don't know. So if anybody else some ideas, or unless you'd like to reframe that.
Well, I was gonna say something like, because I didn't start life with a clear understanding of how things work, and had to go through the process of learning it all myself, I developed this ability to help others on that same journey.
I'm gonna key in on what you just said about I had to write it myself. Yeah. What about I was born with a very open experience in life, and I had to write my own rule book. And I learned what a lot of other people haven't learned, that they learned from a rule book that was given to them. What about that?
Yeah, actually, somewhere in my head, that idea was bouncing around too, that I had a blank slate, so other people don't question their rule books. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I learned things the hard way, and I learned some very valuable lessons by writing my own rule book. Mm-hmm. Hank says, I have a problem with authority due to me having to help be a moderator for my divorced parents growing up. What about you, Hank? You think you can reframe that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Totally. I just discovered my problem. I've always known I had a problem with authority. It just, when we took the trauma class not too long ago, me and Phil, it like popped up and I was like, oh, I do have a problem with authority. And then I figure out why. I guess a great way for me to reword that would probably be, thanks to me having to be a moderator at such a young age, it's helped me become a better active listener to others. Because I had to. Got to prevent those fights, kind of.
So through having to be a moderator for my divorced parents, I learned to be a very active listener and a powerful moderator. Thank you, Hank.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to take a shot? And reframing this is an exercise I learned a long time ago through, and the way that they had us do it was they had us get together with strangers, look at each other, and they said, tell your life story from a victim mentality. And then they had us do it again, and they said, tell it from the perspective that you were in control the entire time. Even from when you were a little kid, you were in control. Is anybody else interested in reframing their story? If not, that's cool. But I think you guys probably get the message.
Carrie raised her hand.
Oh, Esther, please.
I said, I think Carrie raised their hand.
Oh, Carrie, well, go ahead, Carrie.
Yeah, I think with mine, like growing up, my mom always expected perfection, but it led me to, now I'm very careful with the relationships that I choose because I know who I am and I'm proud of what I do. So it's more turning into, I'm proud because of me versus I'm proud because somebody else is proud of me.
Because you had to make somebody else proud.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. So what I'm getting at here, ultimately, is that this is going back to what I was saying about the way I see it. With coaching, the client has their story. As a coach, you have your story. And then when you go into coaching, when you go into discovery, you're learning that person's story from the way they're presenting it to you. But then as you're coaching, you are continuing. It's like a Netflix thing. Like it's a new episode. You get to catch up with their story. And part of what we do with reframing is people are telling us their story. And so a lot of times what we're doing is we're finding powerful ways to turn it around, to find a different perspective, to reframe it. So storytelling is really at the heart of this coaching thing, I believe. And what I'm also trying to help you look at is that, well, let me ask you this. How many of you feel like you're pretty competent and you're pretty good at coaching, or you had the feedback that you're good at coaching? When it comes to coaching yourself, not so great. Is that relatable to anybody? I would guess that the vast majority of all those 22,000 people that I mentioned who are coaches that responded to the journey or the ICF thing, that most of them would say, yeah, I'm really, I feel pretty good as a coach, but I'm not so great at coaching myself. It is possible. And part of, and telling your own stories is one of the powerful ways you can do that, because you're expressing it in a different way that is, you're putting it outside of yourself, especially with the avatar thing, with the hero thing. You're getting outside of your own head and outside of your story that you're telling yourself over and over and over and over, right? And you're putting it out there. And then not only can other people see it, but you can see it differently. It's a big part of the reason we go in, that someone approaches a coach, because they got their own story. They need somebody to come and look at it from a different perspective and help them look at it from a different perspective. So as you can see, I mean, even within just like a matter of minutes and with one sentence, we can really powerfully shift that. Thanks, guys. That was a really awesome exercise. I would like to just throw it out there, like any other questions or comments or anything that's really burning questions before we start wrapping this up. Anything you wanted to share? Otherwise, I'm going to start ushering us out of here.
I would love to hear just your quick take on something. The kind of the recurring message that it's not about us, it's about the client, and not to take up too much of the time ourselves. But I recognize, I also come out of a 12-step background, and the thing of like you telling your story and other people relating to it and that being powerful is really familiar to me. So I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate that.
In terms of where your story fits into the coaching thing? I'm trying to understand.
Yeah. So using it as a marketing thing, putting myself out there is fine. But within the coaching context, maybe I've been trained to be too wary about sharing myself in the coaching.
I have thoughts. Can I pick on you, Mel? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Thanks. It's kind of interesting because this came up with another journey coaching, peer coaching the other day, where I actually had an issue that I didn't know if it should be a coaching conversation because of ethics or a personal conversation. And we worked our way through that. And what was so interesting is, like you were just saying a minute ago, we're not always the best at coaching ourselves. And if we're in the experiencer chair where I'm up in my feelings and I literally cannot see 2 feet in front of me, she was able, even though she has a completely different life experience than me, what she did was she reflected back to me and she said, you know what? I actually have not experienced that kind of marginalization. However, it sounds like you have felt like an outsider and I've been one like this. So she didn't say, I feel the way you feel. She said, it sounds like you feel this way. And here's an experience I had that was similar. So she didn't go into her full story. She just gave a relational element that kind of helped me ground myself and anchor me in the moment and know that the empathy was there. And that's what you really need, right? Like if somebody's lived my exact same life and they're my clone, we're probably going to have an awesome party. But if we're having the same problems, we may not get shit done at the time we need to because we're facing the same challenges, right? So the difference in person and approach and mentality is important, but the similarity in human experience, that's why we're all here. So I think there's ways to do it, like Phil, to your point, and Dominic, what you're doing now, sharing the story and marketing, right? As a learning tool, as a bonding tool, as a way for us to find each other, super important. In the room, in the session, like Phil, you talk about AA. So it's like, yes, there's a point where you stand up, you tell your story, but then it creates space for people, right? Our story is like the moat around the safe castle for people to come into and know they're in the right fairy tale, the right story, the right hero's journey. So, yeah.
Thank you. And Phil, I don't remember exactly who it was in the training that specifically articulated this, but I really enjoyed that. I'm sure it's been mentioned several times, but it's always good to just, if you really feel like it's an important time to assert yourself, to interject, you can always ask, right? You can always put it out there. I mean, it's kind of, it's not very, in my opinion, it's not very good coaching to just be like, oh, dude, you know what? This thing happened to me, no, right? Like you would with your friends. You want to, but if you get consent and you get buy-in, right? If you get buy-in first, boom, like go for it. Because then it's not coming from, particularly if you're picking up on the signals that like this person is kind of putting it out there, like I don't really need, like they kind of want some kind of relational moment. They want some empathy, and or you have, and you feel like you can drop a gem on them of some kind of experience that you've had in your life. You can always, I think it's fair to say, and I think that our fearless leaders in the journey experience would agree that, like, if you say, look, can I share something with you? Because I think it'd be of value to you. I just want to read this real quick from Ellen. Here's mine. I spent decades aspiring to feel comfortable and have recently come to understand that this has been the very source of my unhappiness. I am now on a transformation journey that's entirely about embracing comfort. So boom. I mean, there you go. There's all in one, like the transformation. Beautiful. Thank you. I want to respect everybody's time, especially since things went left a little bit, but I really appreciate you all showing up. I'm going to throw up something real quick here before we get out of here, and then I will hang on just a little bit for the time that I have left on this Zoom account to chat or answer questions or whatever. Just relate to you. Oh, that darn chat window's always in the way of what I'm trying to do. Yeah, just to recap real quick, guys. Let's go through it real quick. So there are two ways that I want to express to you this evening that you can get started is look at your why and figure out why it's important to you to tell your story, and then refer to that, and then we'll go over some of the stuff about how you can do it. It helps you stand out. It helps you align with your audience. It helps you build trust. Your story is your intellectual property that you can then it's important part of your business. It informs your whole marketing strategy. Learning about storytelling can help you be a better coach, because essentially I have a story, you have a story, and then we're going to work on it together. It helps with imposter syndrome to kind of like cement that out in the real world, that like, this is who I am. And then as to how you can get started, is go back to your why and figure out like, okay, what is my purpose? Am I trying to sell something? Am I trying to do this for my own personal use? Am I trying to reach a certain kind of person? Am I trying to fight a battle? What am I trying to do here? And to go back to that story I was telling, somebody needs to hear it. So remember that. Somebody's in pain and they need to hear this. And it's going to be a salve for them. It's going to be water to them. They need it. And it can be both. They can overlap. And like I said, look for that in some of these coaches that you're interacting with, that you're following, that are more experienced, that they got a big following. Look at what they're doing and how much of that is like intersecting. Connect with things that are bigger with yourself. Whenever you're feeling that imposter syndrome, if you're getting nervous, you're thinking, who am I? You can always do that. You can start small. You don't have to go crazy right away. You can start from your comfort zone. Look, once again, if you have some kind of traditional ancestral dance that you used to do as a little kid or something like that, maybe this is the time to put the shoes back on. Like, you can tell your story however you want in 2021. And you can find, and they're all different forms of social media or whatever it is. And remember that with storytelling as a marketing thing, like, offer some value at first. Don't just be selling people. Offer some value, even if it's just that little dopamine hit from a really good like quote. I mean, how many famous and popular influencers do you see? They just drop a quote and it's just clever and it's got like 15,000 fucking likes, and you're like, oh my God, like, really? But people appreciate that. It gives them a little brain boost, gives them a little boost of energy. But then you signal to them that, look, there's more. Like, I'm a coach. I got things to, I got books, I got whatever, I got programs, I got workshops. But address their needs as well. Learn classic story structure if you want to get better at storytelling, but also remember that the story is ongoing. That's the crazy thing about everything being live now, is that the story is ongoing, and such as with your coaching experience. I mean, it's interfacing with people in real time. And remember that telling your story is a really powerful way to help you reframe your own story and coach yourself. This is not an easy thing for people to do, but believe me, it is possible. It is possible. I'm learning to coach myself, and it is not lost on me and how unique and difficult that is, but it is very possible. I think this is part of the way that you can do it. Once again, thank you very much. I am going to be hosting Coaching's Cafe next Wednesday, the 31st at noon Pacific time. So you can join me there, and it'll be a little bit different format. Pam's going to be co-hosting with me, but we can talk about this some more. If you want to show some love, you want to buy me a little coffee or maybe even a steak dinner, I am on Venmo or PayPal at Don Velando. You can also follow me on Hyperfocus Coaching, Instagram. I dropped it in the chat, hyperfocuscoaching.com. Thanks again, y'all. For anybody who needs to check out, I appreciate you. Good night. Couple more minutes if you want to hang out. Once again, thanks so much, and good night to everyone who's got to leave.